Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com. Welcome to the podcast. This is your co-host, Seth Greene. Today, I have the huge honor of interviewing James Arthur and Bersabeh Ray of Harmonic Wealth, New York Times bestselling author of Harmonic Wealth, New York Times bestselling author of The Business of Redemption, the most controversial people in personal development, endorsed by everyone from Bob Proctor to Robin Sharma to almost anybody else you can think of. James, Bersabeh, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Seth. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Our pleasure. Let's go back in time just a little bit. You didn't wake up one morning when you were 8 and say, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. I know there are obviously the longer versions in your books, but how'd you get here?
You want to take that first? How did you get here?
How did I get here? Oh, well, let's see. I wasn't born here. I was born in Iran, and we escaped from Iran during the time at war from Iran to Iraq and came to the U.S. Being what do you call it? Underground, smuggled underground in the desert to get to Pakistan to come to America. The way James and I met, maybe I'll fast forward just a little bit, is I met him when he had just gotten out of prison. So
how many of your guests can say that?
I think in 10, 11 years of doing this, I've only had one other guest who could say that.
Oh, yeah? Okay, well, there you go. Yeah, he had just gotten out of prison, and I heard him speak on stage. And what he was talking about was really raw and real and resonated with me. And I've never seen anyone from the personal development industry that was just that real to talk about all the downfalls and all the pain and struggles that he's gone through and he is going through. So it resonated, and I reached out to him to actually work for him first. And he agreed, and I started doing his social media, and for the past 12 years now, we've been just going at it. You know, he came out of prison homeless and $20 million in debt. So, and we're not that, but I'll let him fill in the details on that. He's a little bit better at the details than I am.
And we haven't always been a couple.
No,
For
we
the
have
first 3 years, we were in a working partnership, and then we started to feel a little bit more, and we were hesitant because we had such a great working relationship and friendship.
Yep.
But nonetheless, we decided to move forward, and we did, and now we're married, and here we are 12 years later. So she didn't set out to be in the leadership and performance industry at all. And I didn't either, to answer your question specifically, Seth. You know, I grew up a very, very insecure and introverted kid. I was picked on in school. I had a dynamic father, and I was not a dynamic guy, and I felt less than. And so, I went out for sports, and I failed miserably at everything. And so I decided to sequester myself in my bedroom and study. And I began to read just literally a plethora of books on everything from philosophy, psychology, business, quantum physics, mysticism, etc. And I pursued it because I felt like if I could figure out the commonalities between all those things, and I could figure out how the world and the universe works, then I can make my world better. And as I started to study these things, I began to have a better world, and I began to perform better, and I began to do better, not only in my personal life, but also in my career. And so that kind of led me. I left AT&T. I was with AT&T for 13 years in a variety of management jobs, and I ended up at AT&T School of Business as a C-suite consultant, working with executive leaders there on things like leadership and communication and presentation skills and team performance, et cetera. And I left and started my own business, and I haven't looked back since. And first, it was more business oriented, but I always had this real attraction to the fact that businesses don't perform, people do. And if you want to change the business, you have to change the people. And that sounds logical, but it is logical and it's pretty simple, but it's just simply not applied. And so I kept studying those personal issues, and it gradually led me into the work that we do today at Harmonic Wealth Global.
You've been called the most controversial man in personal development. Why do you think your ideas are labeled as such? Why do people have that perception?
Well, I think the main reason is Wikipedia, and it's all Wikipedia's fault. I'm just kidding, but nonetheless,
really.
Wikipedia is not my friend, and the fact is, I did go to prison, and I was in a horrible accident, and anyone who was a thinking individual knew it was a horrible accident, and yet the state of Arizona decided to take down the big gorilla. And at the time, I was on Oprah and Larry King, and I was living in a 7,500 square foot estate in Beverly Hills, and I was making $10 million a year with an Inc. 500 company my team and I had built. And so they came at me hard and charged me with a crime. And it floored me. It literally did. And fortunately, I was acquitted of their charge because they charged me with manslaughter, which is ludicrous. And if any of your viewers know the story, 3 people unfortunately lost their lives in October in a sweat lodge that I held at the end of a retreat in Sedona. Broke my heart. And yet it was a horrible accident. And it had happened many, many times before, according to my legal team. It had never been prosecuted as a crime. And yet this time they decided to come at me, and they did. They came at me hard. And I got acquitted of manslaughter because the jury couldn't find one shred of evidence for intentional harm because it wasn't there. But what is lesser included in that charge, if you know the legal system, it was intentionally bumped up because it gave him 2 shots. And the second shot was negligence. And negligence says that some things were overlooked. Okay, I can own that. I wish they hadn't been. Some things could have been done better. I wish they would have been. And so I got convicted of negligence and went to prison for 2 years. And so, you know, the industry who had loved me and had everyone wanted a piece of me to be in the media and elsewhere, turned on me on a dime and literally crucified me. And so consequently, it's not as bad as it used to be, Seth, but there's still a lot of trolls out there. There's still a lot of haters, and everything I could get into in detail, which we can if you want, but I don't think is necessary unless you do, is that it's all public record. It's all part of the records in the court case, and yet nobody pays attention to the court case. What the media did was turn me into a villain, and they did their job very, very well. And I was kind of the harbinger in many ways of the weaponization of the legal system, which we're seeing a lot in today's world, quite frankly. And so I believe, and this might seem strange to some of your viewers, but in retrospect, I believe that God or life prepared me, took me through that. And it's horrific that 3 people died. And I can't really address that. And I wish that didn't happen, but I can only talk for myself. And from my perspective, I believe I was prepared to go through those very difficult times as Bersabeh was escaping from a war-torn Iran, to prepare us for some tough times that we're living in right now. Who better to help you than people who have actually lived it versus read books about it or talk from theory?
Sure.
Amen. I appreciate you sharing that with us. You segued perfectly into the books and that you've written and the courses and programs you've created. How do you think the adversity that you went through changed and helped shape who you are now and how you're able to help others?
Tremendously. I really am not the same man that I was
No.
prior to. And, this is going to sound kind of strange maybe to some people, but I'm grateful for the experience. I don't want to do it again. Don't get me wrong. It was horrific. And yet, what better place to practice all the things you studied and taught and learned than to go deep into your own personal hell and to be able to move through that and come beyond it. And so I believe that it was a gift. It was a gift wrapped in pain and difficulty, but gift nonetheless. And it caused me, Seth, to shift my perspective in so many ways. I see myself in retrospect, and I'm such a different person. And I had to step back and go deep inside and say, okay, as I stood in the desert in 2013, I was $20 million in debt. I was homeless. I was 54 years of age. I was alone. I didn't know Bersabeh yet. And I was in horrible physical condition. I'd lost 40 pounds I didn't need to lose. And I had to say, okay, what is James 3.0 going to be about? And I had to dig deep. And I had to realize what was really, really important, because here's the fact. Supposedly, I was worth north of $20 million. And I had all this fame and all these accolades and all these, quote, supporters and people that love me. And they were gone like that. Literally, my net worth was gone in a matter of months. You don't want to get indicted. I promise you that. Take it off your bucket list. But nonetheless, all the people who loved and support me, with very few exceptions, Bob Proctor, God rest his soul, you mentioned, stood with me. But most people turned tail and ran and just disappeared. Some people even did worse. Before they turned tail and ran, they stabbed me in the back. They went to the media and made comments about things they had no awareness of. They weren't there. They didn't know what happened, and yet they were looking for their 15 minutes. And so it really was a great education. You know, I was in the movie The Secret, I think and I was one of the co-authors of the book. Not one of the co-authors or the people in the movie, besides Bob Proctor, reached out to me. No text, no, hey, how you doing? No, hang in there. Nothing. Just gone. And some of them were like sending emails to my assistant, hey, take our name off his website immediately. And that I was guilty before proven innocent, which is the exact opposite of how it's supposed to be. I had just been indicted and they were already bailing and saying, hey, we're done. Not Bob Proctor, but he was a unique human being. And so anyway, I'm so different. I believe I have a better relationship with God. I have an incredible marriage, which I'm blessed to have. I much more locked in to my virtues and my values and what's really important to me and why I'm here and what I choose to be committed to, and for the right reasons, not to gain fame and fortune, but because it's the right thing to do.
Bersabeh, why do you think people resonate so much more with James 3.0?
Well, I think for most of the reasons he just said is that he can relate to most people now, because there's a lot of people that are in pain and have gone through really traumatic experiences. And what happens in the personal development industry is that those people that get on stage as the speakers, the so-called teachers, they get on there and they make it seem like they're on this high mountain, and then everyone that's there, they're like, oh, I can't be there. What's wrong with me? Well, there is nothing wrong with you. They're not being honest. They're not telling you the truth. You can't be happy all the time. And life is not great all the time. That's a fact. And what he does is that he tells you the truth. He tells you that it's painful. He tells you that, you grow the most through your struggles and pain. It's not, the vacations and the good times that adds to you. It's all the pain and traumas and unresolved emotional issues that makes you who you are. And that's what people mostly resonate with.
James, your passion is obvious. What do you like best about what you're doing now?
It's a good
What do I,
question.
that is a really good question. I don't think I'm on a lot of podcasts. I don't think anyone's ever asked me
No,
that
they
question.
haven't. That's good.
Nice job, Seth. What do I like best? I like working with Bersabeh.
Oh,
And that
We all
that
can't do that, though.
well, and we all don't want to do that. I mean, it's not for everybody. But the thing about Bersabeh and I,
came with a warning.
yeah, the thing about Bersabeh and I is that we have common values
Sure.
and common
Mhm.
principles and a really great friendship. And
Mm.
so in a common direction. And that's really, really important. I enjoy, the time we have together. I enjoy um, being being really honest with people and attempting to share with them in these difficult times. You know, we have traded our sacred relationships, and I talk about this in my newest book, God, Money, and Sex, and the subtitle is How to Understand and Master the Three Human Dilemmas.
Mhm.
And I believe that those three dilemmas have brought us to the precipice of where we are in the world today, and it goes all the way back to the beginning of the humanistic um, um, thriving time where people, became more and more and more secular. If you look at the definition of secularism, it's religious skepticism,
Mhm.
it's a disconnect or a skepticism of God or a fundamental principle, a guiding principle. And part of the problem is that because of that, the family units have been totally destroyed. They're not strong like they used to be, and we don't have this connectivity to what I call a vertical principle, which is metaphoric because God is not in the heavens. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within, and so God is within all of us, and yet we don't have the connectivity to that, and we've basically began to worship at the altar of money and materialism, and look at where it's gotten us. That's exactly where it's gotten us today, in my opinion. And so it's really refreshing for me. And it's not real popular, Seth, because there's still a lot of people. You can name the names, the social media influencers who talk about their plane and their boat and their cars and their watches and all those things. And by the way, it's not that we dislike money. We don't. Money is a tool, and we need to use it to succeed and to operate in today's world. But when we start to worship it and we start to live for it, that's where we really go awry, and we lose that connectivity. And so it's it's a smaller group of people that resonate with that,
True.
but it's typically people who have been successful in some degree, and I can't tell you how many I do one-on-one mentoring with a lot of people, and I can't tell you how many millionaires and billionaires that I've worked with one-on-one, and they say, hey, I've had all these achievements, and yet I feel something's missing. There's just what's next, what's not there, and that's exactly what's not there. It's
Mhm.
that spiritual connectivity and that driving force within you that brings us inspiration every single morning. And money won't do that. I mean, the minute you, and I know this from my own experience, and maybe you do too, the minute you hit a certain level that you've gone after, well, it's time for the next level,
True.
and you think, well, if I can make it to 1 million, then I'll be set. And then you get to 1 million and you're like, that's
Yeah.
not the right number. Must be 2 million, and so on and so forth. And it leaves you drinking seawater, which never quenches your thirst. And so it's nice to be able to talk what I believe, and through my experience, not my theory, but through my experience, because I've been there.
Mhm.
I've been there. And I know that what seems to be incredibly full and fulfilling is actually quite empty in many, many ways.
That is a perfect segue to my next question. Thank you for that. What inspired you to write the new book?
The climate in our world today, what's going on in the world. We scrambled. We got it out during the spring, which is
Sure.
quickly coming to an end. Tomorrow, summer begins, and maybe I just dated your show, but sorry about that. But nonetheless, you can edit that out. But nonetheless, we felt like we needed to get it out before the elections, because there's so much turmoil that's going on in the world today. And so many people are confused, and so many people are struggling, and so many people are so locked in. It's hard to change your paradigm or your mindset, if you will. It's very hard. That's why most people never do it. The Leonardo da Vinci said there's 3 kinds of people. There's those who see, those who see when you show them, and number 3, those who will never see, even when you show them. And there's so many people in that 3rd category that are just turning a blind eye. And I get it. If I hadn't have been through the crash and burn, because
Sure.
I kept saying to my lawyers over and over again, wait a second, I'm an American. I have rights. How can they do this? They came to my office and knocked down the door in the middle of the night, and ransacked my office looking for what? Some great conspiracy? I don't know. But nonetheless, we don't, it's not what we've been sold. And it's much easier for someone who's a legal immigrant, I emphasize, to see that coming from where she's come from, than it is for a lot of us who grew up in America, and we've been conditioned so long that this is how it is in America. And it's just, maybe it was at one point, but it's been changing very covertly for a long, long time. It just hadn't just happened in the last few years. But that inspired us to get the book out, and Bersabeh did all the editing, and she did the artwork, and so yeah, that's a
Well,
long
what I
answer to your
think,
question.
I think you also put it, it was because what we realize is that one of the reasons we got to where we are is that people are just kind of like, oh, not really taking a stand on what's truth, what is actual fundamental truth and right. And we're being swayed and saying it's okay. That's another big reason, is to say, no, we can't do that anymore. We can't just say it's okay anymore. We have to stand for what is absolutely right and truth, and is part of God's laws. That was
And you have to pick a side.
yeah, you
You
can't
can't play the middle.
yeah, you can't play the middle game anymore.
There is no perspective-free point in the universe.
Yeah.
That's right.
Nice. Yeah, exactly.
James, you've talked multiple times about James 3.0. I would imagine you've probably had a 4.0 and a 5.0 since then. What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want people to remember you for? Because obviously it isn't for the adversity that you went through.
Correct. I really would love to be remembered for the fact that I positively helped people remember who they are, become independent thinkers, to develop critical thinking, and to not buy in to the controlling narrative, to not take things at face value, to do, it's funny because we were on a podcast recently, and I said, you have to do your own research. You can't just take what you're fed. When I was a kid, if it was in the news, it was true, or supposedly,
We believed Walter Cronkite.
Yes, we did, and maybe we shouldn't have. But nonetheless, it It was true, and you just can't do that anymore. You have to do your own research, and the host goes, "Man, that sounds like a lot of work." And I said, "Yeah, it is a lot of work. I mean, you have to invest the time, but it's worth it.
Sure.
And think critically and think independently, and you have to be willing to take a stand. If you won't take a stand for what you believe in, you'll fall for anything." And so that's what I'd love to be remembered for that. If I could be remembered for that, that would be a great gift to me.
For our folks watching and listening, where is the best place for them to get the new book and for them to learn about all things James Arthur Ray and Bersabeh?
Well, we'd like to give a gift. We've created a freedom blueprint, and we'd like to give that to your audience for free. It's Harmonic Wealth Global. That's the name of our company. harmonicwealthglobal.com/freedom.
Freedom. Yep.
harmonicwealthglobal.com/freedom, and you can get that absolutely free in your inbox, and it also will give you an opportunity to check out God, Money, and Sex. The only place we have it available right now, it's not on our website, is on Amazon. So we have it available on Amazon. And then if you just want to know about the services and the support that we can potentially give you, that's harmonicwealthglobal.com. And both of us do a variety of things, both together and independently. That we'd love to help and support you any way we can.
All right. We will send everybody to harmonicwealthglobal.com/freedom. That link will be in the show notes. James Arthur Ray and Bersabeh Ray, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us. Keep doing great work, Seth.
Thank you.
We greatly appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody, for watching or listening. We will talk to you or see you next time.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.